Hi lovelies, you're welcome to my channel. Thank you for stopping right here on my space today. If this is your first time of coming across my channel, I am Luch K Styles. I share sewing tutorial videos and pattern drafting right here on my channel, and you are highly welcome. So in today's tutorial, I'll be sharing with you guys how I made this beautiful top with a basque waist, and it was inspired by the picture you saw on the thumbnail. So if this is a niche you always like to get updates on, please do consider subscribing to my channel because it's never going to be a thing of regret. So without wasting much time, I'll just get started with what we have today. So firstly, this is the fabric I have here with me, and I made use of 1.5 yard of Ankara fabric. I'm a size 10, so if you're in a bigger size, you can opt to add more fabric or more inches to your fabric. And here is my matching lining piece. So I took all of that aside now because I'm going to get started by drafting a basic bodice. So firstly, the line I marked across on top of my paper is my shoulder line, which you can see I went ahead to label, and all my measurements will be starting from my shoulder line. So on that shoulder line, I'll just divide my shoulder of 14 inches into 2 and add ½ inch, which is going to serve as my joining allowance to my sleeve, and right there I marked 7.5 inches. So from the point I marked my shoulder, I went ahead to get my armhole length of 8 inches. I've always said that 8 inches is the standard measurement for an adult armhole. Unless you're in a bigger butt size of 45 and above, you can add extra 1 inch to your armhole. So I went ahead to label that line my chest line, and the next thing I'll go ahead now to mark is to divide my armhole length of 8 inches into 2. I got the middle part, and from the half of my armhole, I'll go in by ½ inch, and I'll just simply come to my chest line and divide my bust circumference of 38 inches into 4. I went ahead to mark what I got there. So using my curve rule, I'll go on ahead now to create an armhole curve. Okay, so from my shoulder line, I'll mark my bust point, which is from my shoulder to my nipple, and I also mark my half length of 16 inches. But because of the sake of this dress, I'll be adding extra 1 inch to my half length. So here I'll be working with a half length of 17 inches instead of 16 inches. Okay, reason is because this is going to have a back effect in front. Okay, so that's just simply how I want it. I want it to be a bit longer. So after that, I'll also mark my underbust, which I forgot to mark earlier, of 13 inches. From my shoulder to my underbust is 13 inches, which is that last line I made right there. So I'll simply go ahead to label all of these lines I marked here in order to avoid any sort of confusion. So I marked my bust point, my underbust, and my half length. So the line you see me cancelling out is actually my 16 inches half length, which is not needed. So the next, I'll move over to my shoulder line to create my neckline. So the neck width I'm working with right here is 3 inches, and the neck depth I marked right there is about 2.5 to 3 inches. So I'm actually drafting the back part of this dress first. That's why you see me doing all of this right here. So I went ahead now to create a round neckline, and after that, the next I will do is to come to my half length and divide my waist circumference of 31 inches into 4. Whatever I had, I marked it right there, and I went ahead to connect all the way to the point which I made on my chest line earlier. So having done all of this, I'll go ahead now and cut this out, but I'm yet to give this my shoulder slope, which I just remembered I almost forgot, and I did it right there by coming up by ½ inch from the other side of my neck width and connected slightly to the other part of my shoulder. So this is what I have after cutting out, and I'll proceed now to cut out for the front part of this dress. So I'll simply go ahead to repeat almost the same thing I did for the back. I'll firstly mark a line across, and you all know what it stands for, which is my shoulder line. So I'll simply go ahead now to firstly mark ½ inch from the beginning of this my paper. So this is because the zip will be fixed to the front part of this dress and not to the back. Okay, so I went ahead to rule all these dots into a straight line. So I'm just going to label that my zip allowance. As you can see, I did right there. So this my paper kept coming up. I had to use my sellotape to tape this down. So after I must have done all of that, now I'll start inputting all my measurements. So all my measurements are going to be starting from exactly on my zip allowance line. That is the line which I do right there. So I also went ahead to draft another basic bodice, which is the exact same thing I did for the back, but the only difference right here is going to be for the neck part and and the waist part, but the armhole part is the same. The shoulder is still the same, 7.5 inches. The armhole, everything I did for the front is the same thing I did for the back. So I went ahead now to mark a neck width of 3 inches, and this neck depth is not really necessary because I'll be creating a new one altogether. So I gave this my shoulder slope in order not to forget, just like I did for the other one. And the next I went ahead to mark is my shoulder to my nipple, my shoulder to my underbust, and also my shoulder to my half length or my waistline. Okay, so extending all these lines, I went ahead to label as well. So the next I'm going to do is that from that my neck width, from that point I'll connect like this all the way to my underbust. So you can see how I connected this. This is because of that is how this blouse actually is. So I went ahead to divide my waist circumference by 4, and I made a point right there on my waistline, and I connected it to my chest line. So the next I'm going to create is this basque effect. So from my waistline I came down by 5 inches, and I'm simply going to use this my curve rule to create a curve. So I firstly went ahead to use my pencil so that I will know if I'll be okay with the curve, which I was okay. So I later went ahead now to use my marker to highlight that. So right now I'm done drafting for the front. You can see that this is actually very simple. So before cutting out, I went ahead to slash this from the underbust line. If you watch properly, you can see that I cut out my underbust line. I went ahead to cut off from my neck area, my shoulder part, and this is what I have right here. So I'll be working with this top part of this my top. What I'm going to do is to divide my shoulder into 2, and whatever I have there, I'll be dividing it into 2 equal halves. I'll be connecting a line from that my shoulder all the way to my underbust. So I'll connect this line like this, and I'm going to slash this using my scissors. So I'll slash this and leave about 3/4 of an inch at the top area. I'm not going to slash this all out entirely. Okay, so you will see how I'll do this right here. I left about 1/4 of an inch at the top. So I'll get another piece of paper and I'll place this cup part of my dress or my top on top of it. So I decided to spread here by 3 inches. So I'll keep this and I'm going to separate this apart by 3 inches. So right here, if you are doing this, I'd advise you use your pin to pin this down to stay in place, or you can use your sellotape just like I did right here. So after spreading this out by 3 inches, I went ahead to cut out every other part just the same way I drafted. So you can see what I have right here, and I hope it's not confusing. So I brought the down part of my dress and I'm going ahead now to cut it out because I haven't cut it out yet. So after cutting this out, you realize that this down part is actually smaller than the upper part. So before I proceed, I'll make identification of all of these parts. I just label the down parts my corset, or you can label it your basque, and the top parts my bodies. And I also went ahead to make arrows to indicate which parts will be going with the order. So here is all I have, and I'll label all of this, and I'll go ahead now to cut out on my fabric. So guys, I went ahead now to cut out on my fabric, and this is what I have right here. So for the cup part, you can see I also cut out on my lining piece, for the corset part, and also for the back. So for this corset part, I went ahead to cut out hairstay, which I'll be ironing to the fabric and also to my lining piece. This is to give it enough strength or stability, so it will not be too light. Okay, and you can see that at the top part I added 1/2 inch, at the side I added 1 inch for stitching allowance, and at the base I added 1/2 of an inch. And for this cup part, I added 1/2 inch at the neckline area. For the side I added 1 inch for joining allowance, and for the base I added 1/2 of an inch. I repeated the same thing for the sides. I added 1 inch for stitching allowance and 1/2 inch at the base. Okay, so this is all I did for this part, and also I cut out my lining piece. So guys, the next thing I will go ahead to do is remove all of these pins and start by ironing all of these my pieces right here. So I'm going to iron this and also place my lining front side facing this my fabric, because I'll be doing a total turn up right here. So guys, after ironing everything, you can see that For the corset part, I went ahead to iron my hairstay to my lining piece and to my fabric. So that is the only part I ironed an hairstay to. So guys, after doing all of this, now I'll go ahead now to assemble all of these pieces. But before then, I'll open up this cup part for you all to see what it looks like, and you can see how beautiful this looks already. I really love this fabric because it goes with anything because of its multicolors. So guys, I had to divide this tutorial into two because it was actually getting too long, and I don't really like long tutorials. So in the next one, I'll be sharing with you all how I fix and sew. You can see how neat I did a total turn up right here, so you can see how neat everywhere is. The fabric is neat, the stitching, everything is neat and neatly joined. And I'll also share with you all how to fix and draft this sleeve, and also to fix a band to it, and also how to fix your sleeve to your dress. So this all I'll be teaching in the next tutorial. So till some other time, see you in this same channel. Bye.